Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I'm going to kill two birds with one stone today. I'm watering my cooler shady set, as I call it. This is the coolest of the cooler growers. There's about 25 plants in all, ish, it's not an exact number. And I do them in by genera, because that's how they're on the shelf. So I deal with the Masdevallias first, then I might deal with the Restrepias, and then with the Odonts and the Miltoniopsis. But what I thought I'd do is, if I get them out by genus and put them on water them, and as I finish watering each one, I'll have them on my table. We can then have a look at them. And this is not a chat about care for all of these. It's just a look at how the plants are doing and what I'd hope, for their future, if any, in some cases. So that might take a while. The only way to do it sensibly is to get the camera down and move around the plants. I'll arrange them on the table so that we can see them individually. And they're all smallish plants, so I'll be able to turn them around and still hold the camera and all that sort of stuff. And unlike yesterday, we'll try not to throw any on the floor. I'm obviously not the only one that breaks a spike. It happens. I mean, I've done it, over the years many times. There's some spikes are very, very bendy, and you can get away with a knock and a bump and a sort of catching them in another plant as you pick the pot up, all that sort of thing. But Cymbidium spikes are quite brittle, and that wasn't a case of whether it was brittle or not on this one. It was the fact that it was trapped between a hand that was grabbing a pot to stop it falling on the floor so hard, and it was trapped between that and the edge of the pot. Now obviously that makes the edge of the pot like a cutting edge, doesn't it? So it didn't stand a chance. But at least the whole pot didn't fall on the floor. Anyway, I shall crack on, as it is a watering day. It's only a flush, they only get a flush. They don't get much feed at the best of times, and this time of year they get virtually none. Even though they're cooler, heading towards cold growers, it doesn't mean that they grow fine in the winter time here. They still come from tropical countries. Okay, they come from high up, so it's cooler. A lot come from cloud forests, so relatively shady. But what they don't get is short days. Yeah? And that's something I can't cater with in this country. So, for 4 months of the year, their day lengths are just too short to promote good growth on the plants. They tick over at best, and in some cases they just stall and do nothing until the longer days come back. That's how it is. Anyway, let's crack on with the first lot. Right, I've changed my mind. It is easier to have the camera static on the tripod and give me two hands free. It's just easier. So these plants have all been watered now. They're just waiting to go back on the shelf. I've left them out of their black pots so that we can have a look at the roots if there are any. And these are my Masdevallias, with one exception, which is a Drau Valia, which is an intergeneric between Dracula and Masdevallia that came from Lynn. And that is in fact the first one up. It's Drau Valia, a letter page. We do have some roots in the pot. I won't say it's an excessive root system, but it's plenty good enough for the size of the plant that sits on top of it. We've got a new growth coming up here. We've had some slug damage in the past. I would suggest that happened at Lynn's rather than here, because she does have them and I don't. Simple thing. There's a new growth that's pushed on here. So it is growing. There's another new growth here, yet to unfold its leaf. It's about to do that now with a bit of help. So it is growing. I won't say it's going mad, but it is growing. And I'm assuming, because it came in this sort of pot, that although it's got Dracula in it, the blooms are going to come out the top of the pot. Because if the Dracula was dominant, then it would have to go up the other way so that the blooms could come down through the pot. Anyway, it's growing, it's not going mad, it's hanging in there, I think is the expression, but it's okay. This little one is the worst one of the lot. The whole of the back end of the plant is dead. All that's left is this tiny little bit at the front. There is a new growth, and there are a few tired looking manky roots in the pot. Whether that one's going to hang in there enough to survive or not, I don't know. That's Masdevallia Fuchsia Dawn, and it was split at the end of January 2022. So if that was potted then, it's not doing well at all. That may not survive. And then this one, Masdevallia Coriacea label, in case I pronounced it wrong. And this is what you would call one of the larger Masdevallias that has quite sturdy leaves and quite a sturdy base. It's got a new growth coming just here. It's not a strong growing plant. I think this came from Lynn. It does have some roots, but not many. But then it's not a big plant. I'd class it as hanging in there. If that new growth pushes on well and produces some new roots at the same time, which new growths often do on Masdevallias, then this is going to push on a little bit better than it has done. At the moment, it's just sort of, I won't say it's stalled because it does have a new growth, but it's not growing well. It's doing what I'd expect it to do in the winter with the short days. So it's not a problem, you know, it's just that's how things are this time of year. And the next one up is, this is Masdevallia ignea, however you want to say it. I say ignea. Now, I believe this came from mixed Masdevallias as a division. Not absolutely sure, but I'm reasonably certain. Now, this is slow to push on, but it has grown some new growths with slightly smaller leaves than the older ones. And it is highly likely, you won't be able to see it because it's so tiny. If you look at the growth on the end of my finger, you will see a tiny little bit of green at the base of that growth. That may well be a flower spike, in which case it will be its first one. Oh, coming back along the ones we've just looked at, none of them have bloomed for me. So, say this is Masdevallia ignea. This is one of Hannah's favourite all-time orchids, not just Masdevallias, just all-time orchids. She just loves the shape and the colour. We do have some active roots. We have some older, tireder ones as well. I'd say it was coming along, but this is a cold grower. It's also a little unusual because it's often found out in like long grass on the mountainside. So it would be subject to quite high light, but very thin air and cold. So not the easiest of ones to keep, but I think I've had 3 or 4 of these, and this is the first one that I can safely say is actually growing and probably will make it. The others I had were around the other place and they just wouldn't take the heat. As I said, it's not a cool grower, it's a cold grower. And then this is my best Masdevallia by far, not by a little bit, by far. It's not only massive, a hell of a lot of that plant is new growth. You can see by the lighter coloured leaves. And it has more coming out from the base. It has a pot full of roots. It is doing exceptionally well. So new roots, new growths, more new growths coming, and it's Masdevallia falcata. And the only thing it isn't doing is producing any blooms. It's going to survive. There's no chance, you know, it's not going down or anything. This is growing well, so it will survive okay. This is going to get subject to much brighter light once we get the longer days, and hopefully that, I won't call it a shock, but that change coming from a relatively shady shelf into a brighter shelf at the time when the day lengths have got back up above 11 hours should trigger blooming. And who knows, we might get a mass blooming. There's enough new growths on there. I don't know enough about Masdevallias to say this is what happens, but if there's a new growth, which is where the blooms will come from as that growth matures, the leaf's fully open and everything, if it doesn't bloom relatively soon after that leaf matures, does it ever bloom? Now, that's more of a question than a statement, because I don't know. But there might be somebody out there that knows that. No guessing. I can do guessing. And then the last one of these, this is Masdevallia Prince Charming. Now the other prince thing I had was Inca Prince, and when I repotted it, divided, it fell into two parts. One of them died quite quickly and the other one took a long time, but they didn't make it, and I was disappointed because I had bloomed that one and it was quite good. Anyway, this is Prince Charming. I think this came from Spice Exotic, not sure. And this has a nice new growth coming up here, and it's had several other new growths recently. It's got some reasonable roots in the pot, not bad at all. So this one's doing okay, and I would suggest it's strong enough to bloom when circumstances are right for it. So that's the Masdevallias. Right, on to the next group. Right, the next set is the Restrepias. Now technically two of these are still Hannah's, but she's not in a position to take them back unless she ever got a terrarium, in which case they'd do well. There used to be a display at Burnham's in the Orchid Paradise bit, large terrarium, and several Restrepias did very well in there. They do like high humidity. They don't like exceptionally bright light, they like medium-ish light. This time of year in the UK they could probably do with a bit more light. Longer light, not necessarily brighter light. But the effect on a plant is not only based on the intensity, it's the length it has it, yeah? So you could have a plant that gets ultra bright light for a couple of hours and burns it, whereas it could be in medium light for 16 hours and it'll be fine. So, subjective. Right, this, the label says it's Cuprea and it's a hybrid. Well, bearing in mind that Cuprea is a bronzy colour, and that, in my book, is a purple, I can't think what on earth it's a hybrid with. So I think it's been misnamed. It came from Burnham's, and it came from their private collection. They had a whole group of these, so obviously seedlings growing on and all that. The problem, why it was labelled Cuprea hybrid, was probably because the seed pod formed on a Cuprea, but they don't know what the pollinator was. They don't know what the other part of the hybrid was. So you can't call it a species. If the two subjects are unknown, you can't call it a species. So it was called Cuprea hybrid. But if it was based on Cuprea, then something pretty strong coloured has gone in there to remove all the bronzy colour. Anyway, it's got a lovely pattern on it, which I won't be able to show you. Good root system, bit lopsided. When it gets planted again, it will get straightened up a bit. It's growing okay, yeah, no problems. Alright, so the next one. Oh, the other thing, in my notes I always put the, when there's a spike or buds, I always put the date that the first bloom opened, yeah, and the date the spike finished. So I then can see how long it lasted, you know, which something like the Dendrobium infundibulum will be like 2 to 3 months. These don't last long, the Restrepias, but I don't mark down the dates on these. I've just got them down as perpetual, because they bloom on and off all through the year. I mean, you know, midwinter at the moment, that one's in bloom. There's another one up there in bloom. They come and go, so there is no date as such. Anyway, this is how Lissay. I'm dripping water all over the heater here. It's not going to do it a lot of good, is it? Never mind, I shall wipe it off. It can't get inside. It is a greenhouse heater after all. It must expect to get dripped on now and again. Yeah, this was one of the couple that came from the Eric Young Foundation via Peter White. I still wonder how he got them out. They don't sell plants normally. Anyway, the other one, because it was so similar to this one, the other one went to somebody else. I just kept the one because they were incredibly similar. This is growing okay. That's a typical Restrepia trait. Yeah, you get a growth, which is basically a leaf. You don't get more than one, but then they grow a little kiki with a new leaf. And once that's got some roots, that could be separated off and a nice new plant started. Now I noticed that Insa's got most of his mounted. He might even have all of them mounted, but certainly a good proportion of his are mounted, and they seem to be doing very well as a consequence. It's how they would naturally grow. Right, this is the other one of Hannah's. This one hasn't bloomed. Oh no, this is the first one of Hannah's. We haven't seen one yet. This one has never bloomed. It's Epiphyllum. There's the label anyway. One of Burnham's. Small plant, arrived with me a long time ago with no roots. It is actively growing. It's got new growths coming up. And I think this year these two little plants of Hannah's should push on quite well. They'll get a repot. In fact, probably all of my Restrepias will get a repot as the growing season starts, on the grounds they've all got moss. Therefore, they need regular repots or it will go acidic. And then when you come to repot them and put them in fresh, you've gone from a low pH back up. And the change is quite dramatic and can often lose a root system. So we have to repot regular. This is the other one of Hannah's. And this is Antennifera species, and it's the variety Frontino Giant, another one of Burnham's own. This has just bloomed for the first time. That bloom didn't last long at all. Now that might have been because the plant was a bit dry. I don't keep them very wet this time of year. They get a long gap between watering, otherwise they're just too soggy. But it's growing okay. It's pushed up new growths. Another one coming up here. That's in fact a kiki. If you have a look, there's the main leaf, and this one's coming out the side, which is what they do. So that's coming on okay. Those two little ones, as I said, they're Hannah's. Now this one is the one that's not doing very well. It's difficult to work out why. It doesn't seem to be happy in the pot. It has got some roots, but the upper growth is not that happy. It's got discoloured leaves. It does have some new growths, and it does have some kikis pushing out of the leaves. I mean, here's a nice one here, look. You've got the original leaf, you've got a kiki, you've got another one, and you've got an ex-bloom, one that's just gone over. Yeah, that one doesn't seem to be doing quite as well as some of the others, but it's, you know, it's not dying or anything, it's just not doing as well as the others. And then I had two very large Restrepias. I only kept one of them. Somebody else had the other one. And this one is Sanguinea. Yeah, Sanguinea. Sanguinea with an A on the end. Another one from Burnham's. And this one's in flower as well. This one flowers quite frequently. Very similar to the last bloom we saw. There's another bud round here. One just gone over here. This is doing okay. It's got good roots in the pot. You notice, I can show you this one because they do show up. Roots on Restrepias are like tiny little hairs. They are incredibly fine, and they don't like getting absolutely dry because they just die. So it does pay to not let these get totally dry. You can see the old buds on here that have gone over. It blooms frequently. It's got new growths coming up, so it's doing okay. But again, it's got some moss in the pot, so it'll need a repot. So that's my 6, of which 4 are mine and 2 are technically Hannah's. But I doubt if she'll ever take them back unless she gets a terrarium, because she can't give them the humidity they need. The humidity for these in here is a little lower than they would like, but they'll get away with it. But that might explain why some of the leaves are a little discoloured. They're just not as bright and shiny and green as they perhaps ought to be. Anyway, that's that set done. Okay, the next set, these are all new acquisitions. They're all 2024 acquisitions, so none of them have been with me very long. And they are a genus that I'm having another go at. I've had several goes at this genus and failed miserably across the board over a very long period of time. But they are some of my favourite orchid blooms. And I've now got cooler temperatures. I'm not subject to that intense heat through the summer. So they should do better. Yeah? And I still think the goal with Miltoniopsis to do well is to start with a good plant. Some of these are not necessarily so. Right, the first two came from Spice Exotic. The problem with these, I did know, so I'm not having a go, I knew this before I got them, they will have come from Equigenera. Therefore, they have travelled bare-rooted and have been bare-rooted for a while before they were potted. And they haven't been potted long, so these are not established plants. They may never establish, they might fail, but we shall see. They are in the best time of year Sorry, I hope that was a blackbird and not a rat. Did look highly like a rat. There are rats in the garden. Impossible to totally get rid of them because they just come in from one of the other neighbours, so it's a losing battle. Yes, so where did I get to? So they've been recently potted up, they're not established. The winter time is not a bad time of year because they're not dormant, but they're not doing much. Again, short day length. They haven't got their day length that they need to push on and grow better. So it does give them a bit of time to get used to my environment and settle down. They are in moss, but the fact that they haven't been in there long, that can't be old moss, not yet. So anyway, that's it's Miltoniopsis Dainty Lady, Cherry City, I think that is, or I can't read it. It's faded. That makes me wonder if the label's faded and it is a Spice Exotic label, it implies it's been around a long time. Or the silly billy's been in bright light, because that'll fade labels. Anyway, this is an unestablished plant. It's got quite a few bulbs. I doubt if it's bloomed yet, and it will be a division. I doubt if it's been grown on from a seedling. Probably a division of like the plant we're just about to see. I believe that's a primary cross, but I forget what its makeup is. That's that one. I won't say it's doing well because I haven't had it long enough. If it survives into the longer days and starts to grow, it should be okay. And this is the other one that came from Spice Exotic. This, if it is a single plant, is a good plant. But again, it's not properly established yet. It does have some roots showing in the pot, but they look to me like older tired roots. That's probably the bare roots that it arrived with. And this is Miltoniopsis phalaenopsis, and it's the variety John Leathers, or John Leather, I can't read the label again. I'm having trouble with the printed label fading and the handwriting. Combination of the two. But it's not a bad plant. It's got a lot of pseudobulbs. The leaves are green. It looks good and healthy, and some of those new growths are in there. So this one is growing. It is doing something. But what it will need to do is establish a better root system and be a nice strong plant, and then we should get some blooms. Now the fact that that is Miltoniopsis phalaenopsis, this one is warmer tolerant. So most of them are cool to cold growers. This one grows at higher temperatures. You could even class it as the bottom end of intermediate. So it will tolerate some heat, but don't go mad. It's still a Miltoniopsis at the end of the day. Now this came from Burnham's. This is a species. This is Vexillaria. I've had that one before, but this is the variety Josephina. It's got a good strong new growth. I suspect this is one of their own seedlings. In fact, I'm sure it is, because in the nursery at the last visit there was a whole set of these. So where there are quite a lot in neat, tidy little rows, they're seedlings that have been moved on to the next stage, which in this case would have been potted on, yeah? And then if they're for sale, they move out into the main nursery. If not, they stay in the private area till they're ready for sale. But obviously these were deemed strong enough to be able to be sold, and that is a good strong new growth. This one's just in bark, and I know that because I asked Sarah. She said, no, we just put ours in bark. We don't mess around with the moss. They don't like their roots being disturbed at the best of times, and if you put them in moss, you've got to do it more often. So they do them all in bark now. You've also got the benefit of, these are prone to rotting near the base. If they're in bark, when you water in bark, the top dries quite fast, especially in new bark, which means the base of the plant isn't sat in moisture for any length of time. If you pot them in moss, they shouldn't be buried. They should literally be sitting on it so that the base doesn't stay wet. So that's that one. None of those have bloomed for me yet. And the last one was bought in bloom, again from Burnham's. Doesn't look a bad plant, not bad. Hopefully it is just one plant. It does look like just one plant, I must admit. It's a dead flower. The first bloom on this has just gone over. I've just taken it off. Now this one, this is in the cocoa fibre. I can gently lift this out of the pot. It's actually got some reasonable roots, and some of those are active roots. So it's happy in that medium, but it's a medium that unfortunately breaks down almost as fast as moss. And moss tends to break down relatively gradually. That cocoa fibre stuff, when it goes quickly, yeah? And it'll often start damaging the roots before you've even noticed that it's on its way out, but it does go relatively quickly. Lasts a bit longer than moss, but not too much. So that's those. Right, one more set now, and that's the Odontoglossum types. And what have we got? We've got 2, 4, 6, 8 more to go. I'll be back in a bit. Okay, the last set now, these are my Odont types. They're all Oncidiums technically. Although some of them could be into generics. The first two are the ones that I paid an awful lot of money for. They are from the Mather's Foundation collection. They have started to sell plants on their open days and at shows, but then as a nursery they're not open to the public, and they don't have a retail outlet effectively, or they do occasionally but not very often. Anyway, I got these at the show at Wisley. They were paid for with donation money because I couldn't have afforded these. They were a lot of money. I probably will never pay that much, but they are special. They're, you know, unique to the Mather's Foundation. They can't be found anywhere else. You know, they're their own hybrids, and it's actually called tippling. And because these were seedlings, in other words, it was their own cross, it happened to be one that when they started to bloom, it had quite a bit of variety in the blooms. And as such, I thought I was buying two different plants. But when I actually inquired, they were in fact both seedlings from the same cross. And one's a dark form and one's a light form. This is the light form, and it's not doing very well. It does have a new growth, and hopefully it will get some roots. These bulbs are rotten, but I daren't take it out until I know it's growing some roots or I see another new growth. I don't want to disturb it. Yeah, not at the moment, but it does have, I won't say a strong new growth, but it's got one. So it's not gone. And then the other one, again, this is the same cross, tippling, but this is a dark form version of the seedlings. This has got a much better new growth on it, and it does actually have some older tired roots in the pot. So this one's not doing quite as bad as the other one. This one will be fine. But it needs the longer days. It needs to sort of have time to set some roots and get a new growth going. Both are in moss, so they will need something done sometime this year. So that's those two. The next one, I've just cut the spike off. This is tiger tail. Effectively, this is an Odontocidium. So it's an Odontoglossum crossed with an Oncidium. All the Odontoglossums virtually across the board have been redesignated. Most of them went into Oncidiums, so it's probably not even classed as an intergeneric anymore. Anyway, it's tiger tail. When I repotted this last time, it got split. The larger part of the plant went in here. That's just finished blooming. On this bulb, I will be looking for a new growth very soon. That's doing fine. It's got. Do you know what? I didn't water that. Idiot. Totally missed that one. Now, I don't absolutely soak these this time of year. They tend to get their water tipped down the outside of the pot. Try not to keep the centre of the pot too wet. They're not growing much. This plant effectively isn't growing at all. It's now dormant. It's lost its spike. That spike being removed should encourage the plant to start a new growth. So that's that one. And then this is the other piece. This one has a spike just starting. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I obviously stopped watering halfway through. Well, I'll water them as I go, it's no big deal. This one is doing okay. There's a big gap down there with roots in it, so I'm just doing it now. I'm just pushing the media down into that gap. This one does have some new roots coming, and we have active roots in the pot for this one. So this one's doing okay. It's got a spike coming on the latest growth. The latest growth is slightly larger than anything else on that plant. So again, tiger tail. So that's that one. As I say, this one does have active roots. So that's that one. Next we've got one that again was split. And I have no name for this one, but I liked the bloom, so I got it. It does have a new growth that's weak. This is not a strong new growth. And we do now have some active root tips starting from that new growth. The old roots are old and tired, but they're probably still functional. Now those are the type of roots, if they stay too wet and soggy, they will die, they will rot. However, the active ones could certainly do with a bit more moisture than it's got now, because I forgot to water this one too. I obviously got part way along the row and stopped and started filming instead of finishing one job at a time. So that's an Oncidium Odontocidium type hybrid, and the split has rotted. So that one's going in the bin. You can see the new growth. I thought it was doing okay. The new growth has completely rotted, completely soggy, and the old bulb has got browning all up through it, so that's gone. And that's the one with the name on it, Calico Gem. So anyway, it's gone. Whatever it was, it is no longer. And then the next one, yet again, not watered. Luckily these don't take long, and all the watering and everything is just here, ready to go. So now this one has no label. Now this one is a split. It's either the split off of that hybrid, or it's where that one that I've just thrown out was split from. So when this one blooms, I'll find out if it goes with the one that's still okay or the one that's been thrown out. Hopefully it goes with the one that's been thrown out, because then we haven't lost it. But virtually no roots going on in this plant. It's not doing very well. The new growth has yet to produce new roots. So I would suggest the plant is a little weak. But not gone yet. And then the last one, yet again, not watered. Duh. Now this one is a little bit special because I got this from my friend Brian, who's the Cymbidium guy I keep talking about, but he also grows great Cattleyas and great Odonts. Those are his three main things that he specialises in. And this was at a show on his display. At the Wessex show, he's often given his own display, separate from the, you know, the competition tables, just to get a lot of blooms all in one go. And this was in bloom at the show, and I said, "Cool, I like that one." And he said, "Do you want it?" And I said, "Ooh, yeah." And then he said, "That'll be." I thought he was going to give it to me, but nonetheless, I didn't pay a lot for it. I liked it, and this is Odontoglossum Anna Claire, and it has one bulb and a lovely strong new growth, and it is growing roots. So this one should do well. And that's it. That's the Odont set, and that completes my cooler, shadier set, as I call them, because they are. They're all cooler growers, with possibly one exception, which was that Miltoniopsis phalaenopsis. But apart from that, they're cooler growers. They don't like intense light, they don't like the bright light, they don't like heat. So none of these would have been doing very well in the old place. However, I've got good hopes for these in this forthcoming growing season, provided we don't get heat waves. Because the problem is here, although I don't get much sun on this place, it's there for a few hours midsummer, and I can still keep it relatively cool. I do the opposite as in the winter. If I want to get the heat out of here, I open that door and let it into the lounge and have to put up with it. I just open my shirt another button. But yes, I don't get that sort of heat for any length of time, and I don't worry too much about the bright light. The bright light is at that end of the grow room. So I've got all of this end where I don't get that intense light. I don't get the intense heat. So hopefully they should do fine. Anyway, that's that. That probably went on for quite a long time. And well, makes up for the short one yesterday, doesn't it? The one yesterday would have been quite a bit longer if I'd included all the swear words, but I didn't. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.